Alright, what's good with y'all? T-Flows Reacts, another one. Today we gonna be reacting to, I guess they tried to arrest this nigga for grieving. I guess the nigga was crying and they tried to arrest his ass. We gonna see what this shit about. If y'all like this, comment, subscribe, share, follow me. All subscribe, follow, same shit, you know what I mean?
Welcome to Audit the Audit, where we sort out the who and what and the right and wrong of police interactions.
Okay.
This episode covers reckless burning, obstruction, and Fourth Amendment seizures, and is brought to us by Brands Coset's channel. Be sure to check out the description below and give them the credit that they deserve. On September 19th, 2022, 31-year-old Rayshawn Swaggerty Owens was sitting on a park bench in Cowlitz County, Washington, near several burning candles shortly after a vigil had been held to mourn the loss of 26-year-old Celeste Williams, who had passed away earlier that day in a single car crash, when Officer David Mora of the Longview Police Department approached him. The interaction that followed was captured on Officer Mora's body camera.
How you doing, sir? I definitely cannot. It's for my safety, okay? What do you got going on out here?
What does it look like?
You want to be a smart?
Bitch, I ain't doing shit.
You want to be a smart? It's called reckless burning. If you want to go that route, we can go ahead and push that route. Reckless burning when you're burning something outside of an authorized area. You want to go that route? Do you really want to go that route? Do you really want to go that route? The light is for my safety. I don't know who you are. I don't know if you're a criminal who's going to try to pull a gun out on me or a knife or anything like that. That's what the light's for, okay? That's what they're there for. That's why they're put on patrol vehicles. What's your name?
My name is Rashawn.
What's that?
1 second. I usually call you supervisor. And if this is bothering you, I'll put it out for you.
I'd appreciate that. That's what my contact. I was just going to ask you nicely to do that, but since you want to be a smart and ask me what does it look like and talk to me like I'm dumb, I'm obviously going to push the other route. If that's, I mean, if that's really how you want to go.
Officer Mora claims that Mr. Swaggerty Owens is committing quote-unquote reckless burning by lighting the candles. Section 9A.48.040 of the Revised Code of Washington provides that, quote, a person is guilty of reckless burning in the first degree if he or she recklessly damages a building or other structure or any vehicle, railway car, aircraft, or watercraft, or any hay, grain, crop, or timber, whether cut or standing, by knowingly causing a fire or explosion. Additionally, under Section 9A.48.050 of the Revised Code of Washington, quote, a person is guilty of reckless burning in the second degree if he or she knowingly causes a fire or explosion, whether on his or her own property or that of another, and thereby recklessly places a building or other structure, or any vehicle, railway car, aircraft, or watercraft, or any hay, grain, crop, or timber, whether cut or standing, in danger of destruction or damage. Because no damage resulted from burning the candles, Mr. Swaggerty Owens' actions clearly did not constitute first-degree reckless burning. And while there may be a potential argument that lighting a candle amounts to causing a fire under the second-degree reckless burning statute, as the candles were nowhere near a building or any of the other enumerated objects, it is highly unlikely that a court would conclude that Mr. Swaggerty Owens committed reckless burning in this situation, or that Officer Mora even had reasonable suspicion to believe that he did. Likewise, while a seasonal burn ban was in effect in Cowlitz County at the time of this encounter, the ban only prohibits land clearing and residential burning that would typically require a burn permit and does not apply to lighting candles. Accordingly, the memorial for Ms. Williams was likely outside the scope of the burn ban and other prohibitions on burning.
George Salami, can I go ahead and get a second?
I need to
boy,
find
if
the
he
best
knew
way
that
to
shit,
learn
he could
math
be able
and
to talk
science.
all the shit he want, nigga. I ain't burning shit. Can I get some idea? No, I ain't commit a crime. This ain't reckless burning. I ain't burn a property or none of that shit. Yeah, you can say that.
Let me get your ID.
Why?
I already told you.
Why?
Reckless burning.
Okay, you want to put it out?
You can put it out, but first you're going to give me your ID.
Would you like me to put that out? If that's bothering you, you want me to put it out?
I'm telling you.
Okay, I'll put it out.
We're going to have to put it out, but let me get your ID.
I'll put this out. What's your name again?
Officer Mora. M-O-R-A. Make sure you spell it right, okay?
I don't need to spell that. I'll put these candles out so it's bothering this guy.
You have ID on you?
I do, but I don't need to give it to you.
Okay. Is that really the route you want to take, sir?
Yeah.
What route? I'm
Obstruction?
sitting on the bench.
When Mr. Swaggerty Owens refuses to hand over his identification, Officer Mora claims that he is committing obstruction. Washington state has not passed any so-called stop and identify laws requiring individuals to identify themselves in certain circumstances. And even if it had, stop and ID statutes generally only require that an individual identify themselves by informing the officer of their name, not by showing ID. Additionally, an individual's refusal to identify themselves would be insufficient to sustain a conviction for obstruction obstruction under Washington law. According to Section 9A.76.020 of the Revised Code of Washington, quote, a person is guilty of obstructing a law enforcement officer if the person willfully hinders, delays, or obstructs any law enforcement officer in the discharge of his or her official powers or duties. In the 2011 case of State versus Williams, the Supreme Court of Washington overturned an individual's conviction for obstruction for giving officers the wrong name when they asked to identify himself, concluding that an individual must engage in some conduct in addition to pure speech in order to establish obstruction of an officer, and that, now quoting, in order to avoid constitutional infirmities, we require some conduct in addition to making false statements to support a conviction for obstructing an officer. Building on this case, the Supreme Court of Washington explicitly determined in the 2014 case of Washington versus Veyer that, now quoting, refusal to identify oneself to the police is insufficient to support a conviction for obstructing a law enforcement officer. Accordingly, a court would likely conclude in this situation that Mr. Swaggerty Owens could not be arrested for refusing to identify himself, and that his refusal to identify himself did not constitute obstruction under Washington law. Additionally, it is important to keep in mind that even in states that criminalize the refusal to identify, such laws can only be constitutionally applied to instances where officers have reasonable suspicion to believe that the individual whose identity is demanded was involved in criminal conduct. As we have discussed before on ATA, the Supreme Court held in the 1979 case of Brown versus Texas that the application of a stop and identify statute to an individual who was detained without reasonable suspicion violated the Fourth Amendment, and that the individual could not be punished for refusing to identify himself under such circumstances. Therefore, even if Washington had a stop and identify statute that would require Mr. Swaggerty Owens to identify himself during a Terry stop, it is unlikely that it would apply here because a court would probably conclude that Officer Mora lacked the required reasonable suspicion to detain Mr. Swaggerty Owens.
Yeah, you're lighting candles.
I didn't light these candles.
And that's what I was asking you. And that was my question. But since you want to go right off and start talking to me like I'm dumb, asking me what it looks like.
Look at the light. You can't blind me.
That's what police lights are for us to see. Look, here's my question, right? What if you're I'm not saying you are, but what if you're some individual who's trying to hurt anybody? Okay. Not just an officer, but anybody.
But I'm not.
I'm not saying you are, but I don't know that.
Okay. Well, now you know.
And that's what my lights are for. I still don't know that. I really don't.
Okay.
So you really want to be this difficult, sir?
There ain't nothing about being difficult. I ain't doing nothing wrong. I'm sitting on the bench.
Okay.
Turn your light off quickly.
I'm not turning off my light.
Okay, well, I don't know what to tell you. You want to be rude? I'm going to be rude.
How am I being rude? Because I told you.
Light in my eyes.
Hey, you need to relax,
no,
okay?
I don't need to relax.
Okay, then amp yourself up then. If that's the route you want to go.
With me, you can go ahead and head back to your vehicle.
I'm not going to head back to my vehicle until you're identified.
Don't come over here pressing wait on me. Call your supervisor.
I got somebody else coming out. Don't worry.
Tell them to pull up. I'm on.
You asked me to turn off the lights. I said I can. They're on for my safety.
I got a camera too.
Perfect.
Okay.
By all means.
Awesome. That's out. You want this lighter? That's not mine either. You want it? You can have it.
It's not. I don't care about the lighter.
Throw away this trash. That's not mine either.
I'm not saying it is.
Okay. Well, have some condolences for somebody. Yeah. Forget about that one, huh?
Do you feel tougher now by talking like that? Do you feel like you're this big bad guy or this big bad by talking like that?
No, but I feel like you a bitch.
Okay.
But that ain't got nothing to do with what we talking about. Nothing.
After Officer Mora calls for backup, another officer, who appears to have had previous contact with Mr. Swaggerty Owens, arrives on the scene and approaches Officer Mora and Mr. Swaggerty Owens. The remainder of the encounter was recorded by her body camera.
Are you causing trouble? What's going on?
I was sitting here with the candles. This dude came up, had a problem with me. He came up pressing real hard, so I turned on my camera to protect him, and I told him to call for backup.
Did you know Katrina?
Huh?
Did you know Katrina?
I know everybody.
Oh, I don't know that.
You know what his name is?
I forget. Sorry, I guess
It's fine.
our contacts haven't been too bad.
Yeah. I mean, there's no need for my name. I'm just sitting on the bench. Not bothering nobody. I pay my taxes. My house is right down there. But I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just sitting on the bench. You came over here pressing me with the light.
I came over here to turn on my light for my safety, okay? If you have a problem with it, that's too bad.
I just told you I did. You came over here pressing me with the light.
How do I press you with the light?
I can't see you. Do I got sunglasses on? No, I don't think so.
I mean, I hope not.
So you can run your headlights. You can do all that. Then you say you want to push your little light bar. Want me to go get my light bar?
That's for our safety. There's no reason to hassle over
You got
that.
your light bar on?
Well, I turned it off because I didn't want to blind you guys. But
Thank you. That's common sense.
well, I could see you wanting to pay your respects to Katrina. That's pretty awful.
I mean, yeah. So, I mean, y'all can go about your way. I'm not doing anything wrong.
I was
Well,
simply asking you.
This ain't my lighter. You want the lighter, take the lighter.
Is that what I
If you
said?
feel like those candles are bothering you, take the candles.
weren't they lit?
The only thing in mind, because you made me put them out.
I simply asked him, what are you
No.
doing? He wants to be smart.
I'm not gonna argue with you.
What does it look like? So,
I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not here to argue with you today. You want to argue with me? Come to my house tomorrow. I'm not going to argue with
Are
you.
you living on
Yeah.
24?
Yeah.
Yeah.
nobody's trying to argue with you.
Well, what's the plan here?
I'm going to sit right here. Like I said, if you want the candles, if you want this lighter, if you
I
want
don't
this
need to
bag,
take anything. I simply asked
I mean, this is trash. You can go throw it away if you'd like to. You don't have to. I'll throw it away on my way out. But I'm not going anywhere.
I'm not asking you to leave.
All right. Well, then there's no issue.
I like this fat nigga.
I was simply asking what you were doing out here. It's a
What's
candle,
it look
right?
like I'm doing out here? What would you be doing out here if your friend died? What would you be doing
I
out
don't
here?
know who your friend is. I don't know about
Why
that.
everybody's friend?
Okay, well,
So
I
now
don't
you're
know about
acting
that.
stupid. I'm a human being just like you.
Okay.
So you want to write me a ticket? Cool.
I'm not writing you a ticket.
Well, then
I
get
was
out of
simply
here, bro.
trying to
I'm
identify
not dealing with you.
Officer Mora informs Mr. Swaggerty Owens that he does not intend to write him a ticket,
All right, so what the
then
fuck you there for?
reiterates that he's still trying to identify him. Although Officer Mora never tells Mr. Swaggerty Owens that he is being detained, it is possible that his actions during the interaction could have nonetheless constituted a so-called seizure under the Fourth Amendment. In general, officers can quote-unquote seize a citizen within the meaning of the Fourth Amendment through the use of physical force or by a show of authority. In the 1980 case of United States versus Mendenhall, the Supreme Court held that an individual is seized through a show of authority, quote, only if, in view of all the circumstances surrounding the incident, a reasonable person would have believed that he was not free to leave. Examples of circumstances that might indicate a seizure, even where the person did not attempt to leave, would be the threatening presence of several officers, the display of a weapon by an officer, some physical touching of the person of the citizen, or the use of language or tone of voice indicating that compliance with the officer's request might be compelled. Additionally, in concluding that the individual in the Mendenhall case was not seized, the court noted that the officers requested but did not demand to see her identification. While, as the Supreme Court explained in the 2004 case of Heibel versus 6th Judicial District Court of Nevada, Humboldt County, quote, a police officer is free to ask a person for identification without implicating the Fourth Amendment, and, quote, interrogation relating to one's identity or a request for identification by the police does not by itself constitute a Fourth Amendment seizure. Some courts have concluded that an officer's demand for identification can rise to the level of a Fourth Amendment seizure. For instance, in the 2007 case of Roswell versus Hudson, the Court of Appeals of New Mexico held that a passenger in a vehicle that had been pulled over was seized when an officer demanded his identification because, quote, given the totality of the circumstances, he was detained in such a way that a reasonable person would not feel free to leave. Although the fact that Mr. Swaggerty Owens was sitting on a public bench distinguishes the circumstances of this situation from those in the Roswell case, there is a strong argument that Officer Mora's persistent demands for identification, along with the use of the spotlight, his mention of an obstruction charge, and the fact that his tone of voice and word choice made compliance seem mandatory, rendered this interaction a seizure for Fourth Amendment purposes. As we discussed earlier in this episode, Officer Mora probably did not have the reasonable suspicion necessary to detain Mr. Swaggerty Owens. So, if a court decided that this encounter did amount to a Fourth Amendment seizure, it would likely also find that it was an unreasonable and therefore unconstitutional detention.
I'm not dealing with you. You already done pissed me off.
Okay.
You already took it too far. You still want to turn off the light?
I'm not going to turn off.
All right then. I don't want to hear it. If you ain't got nothing to say to me, I ain't got nothing to say to you. And that's how that goes.
All right, nigga, get your
So you think you know Wick?
Okay. Sorry for your loss.
Have a good day.
You too.
The body camera footage from this encounter went viral, and on October 14th, 2022, the Longview Police Department released a statement on its Facebook account that read, quote, we understand there's a video circulating that has caused anger and disappointment. All Longview police officers are expected to discharge their duties with honor and integrity. The Longview Police Department is conducting a review of the incident and behavior of the officer involved. On October 19th, 2022, Captain Brandon McNew issued a warning letter to Officer Mora, notifying him that he violated department policy and engaged in unnecessary escalation during his interaction with Mr. Swaggerty Owens. In the letter, Captain McNew wrote that Officer Mora's conduct demonstrated, quote, a lack of emotional intelligence, and that he improperly used de-escalation tactics when he approached Mr. Swaggerty Owens. Captain McNew also stated that Officer Mora's actions reflected unfavorably on the department, and Officer Mora was ordered to retake de-escalation tactics and emotional intelligence training, and explain what he learned in a presentation to his patrol team. In response to the disciplinary action against Officer Mora, Mr. Swaggerty Owens told a local news outlet that the department's written warning wasn't enough, stating that to him, the punishment was a quote-unquote slap on the wrist. It is unknown if Mr. Swaggerty Owens filed an official complaint or if he intends to pursue any sort of legal action. Overall, Officer Mora gets a C- because although he chose not to further escalate the situation by using force or arresting or citing Mr. Swaggerty Owens for one of the offenses he falsely claimed he was committing, he maintained an aggressive and hostile demeanor throughout the encounter, harassed Mr. Swaggerty Owens for clearly innocuous behavior, and potentially seized him without reasonable suspicion in violation of the Fourth Amendment. Officer Mora also demonstrated an alarming lack of knowledge about Washington's criminal statutes, as he incorrectly asserted that Mr. Swaggerty Owens had violated both the reckless burning and obstruction statutes when he had not. Further, while the Constitution would have allowed Officer Mora to engage in a consensual encounter with Mr. Swaggerty Owens to investigate the burning candles, I question why Officer Mora's involvement in the situation was necessary in the first place, when Mr. Swaggerty Owens was clearly not engaged in any criminal behavior. And, despite Officer Mora's assertions otherwise, I believe that it was entirely evident upon observation alone that Mr. Swaggerty Owens was mourning after the vigil. This interaction demonstrates how officers can overstep their legal authority when they take it upon themselves to attempt to monitor and control the non-criminal activities of citizens. Mr. Swaggerty Owens gets an A for calmly but firmly refusing Officer Mora's unlawful demands for identification, maintaining a peaceful demeanor while still...
Because if he knew what the fuck his rights was as far as that, was it reckless burning? He would have had an A+ on that one, but...
his rights and expressing his dissent with Officer Mora's actions, and filming the encounter to ensure that Officer Mora's conduct was recorded. Although it should have been Officer Mora's job, at several instances in the encounter, Mr. Swaggerty Owens actually took it upon himself to de-escalate the situation, such as when he offered to put out the candles, while Officer Mora repeatedly and unnecessarily escalated the encounter by taking Mr. Swaggerty Owens' attempts to defend his rights personally. It is truly unfortunate that Officer Mora chose to disrupt Mr. Swaggerty Owens while he was attempting to mourn the loss of his friend. And I commend him for sharing his experience and speaking out publicly against the way that Officer Mora treated him. Let us know if there is an interaction or legal topic that you would like us to discuss in the comments below.